Hey everybody. Had a little mic trouble on this one. Sound quality is not going to be up to usual standard. Sorry.
You know, it's kind of a shame that Marvel did the whole viral "we didn't start the fire" thing, because I feel like the Game of Thrones cast really should have done one. Game of Thrones, penultimate episode of the entire show, second to last time we will see these characters, and this might go up a little bit later than usual because I'm recording it the morning after instead of immediately after. I'm kind of glad I did that. I did that actually because I was just tired and needed to go to bed, but it gave me the chance to sort of literally sleep on it and think a little bit more and gather my feelings, because they are kind of mixed and a little bit all over the place. And I'm still trying to assess how much I do or don't like this episode. Here's the thing. It's not a slam dunk either way. If I like it, it's with reservations. If I don't like it, it's with acknowledgements of merit. So I'm going back and forth on that. Okay, let me just start talking through this. I think, well, at least the impression I get overall is that not many people are actually thrilled with the season, but the reason people don't like this season seems to vary on a case-by-case basis. In other words, it seems to be pleasing nobody. Or at least up until this episode. I haven't checked reaction on this episode. Maybe this one was a slam dunk for people. But if I were to put an underlying fundamental issue with the season as a whole, it's that too many character and large-scale plot lines were left to be closed in too small a space. They probably should have closed out a few more characters, resolved their plots in some earlier seasons, because one of the nagging feelings I have about the season as a whole is that a lot of stuff feels a bit rushed. And on the one hand, I'm like, but there's 8 seasons worth of build-up. But on the other hand, I'm going, well, it's not so much that it's rushed, it's that it has to share space with the closing out of all these other plots as well. And it feels like at least partially these episodes, this one in particular, was written with a checklist of plot threads that had to be dealt with, and they're trying to clear off as many as possible. There's 7 named character deaths that I can remember off the top of my head. I might even be missing 1 or 2. So that does feel like a kind of a hurried wrap-up, even though the build for most of these plots has been slow moving as it's come forward. I suppose I'll touch on the character deaths because I know what I'm going to spend the most time talking about. So, in terms of character deaths, Jaime and Cersei, which I probably keep pronouncing it wrong. I change how I pronounce it like every time I say it. I'm sorry, just work with me here. The two of them, it was fitting. It wasn't especially satisfying. Then again, I'm not sure it was supposed to be. The thing is, though, unsatisfying endings for characters, I think, are easier to get away with when you know there's going to be a lot more show coming. So, like, the Red Wedding. Well, it was tragic, but it was also kind of an unsatisfying conclusion for a fair number of characters, but also there was going to be so much more after that, so it kind of gave you a chance to reassess, you know, what your investment in the show was. That's not the case here, so when something closes out not quite satisfactorily, it leaves a little bit more of a bitter taste in your mouth. And I don't think what happened with the two of them was bad, and again, it made sense. It just felt a little anticlimactic. And I was wrong. I'd been calling for ages that Jaime was going to kill her. He was going to be pushed to the point that he had to, and he didn't. They did die together, though, so there's that. Qyburn, ooh, he went down hard and fast. Just throw, like, okay. We got Clegane Bowl, which was, that went pretty well. Like, for something that has been built up for as long as that has, that could have been really, an underperformer. I kind of wish it didn't have to share space with everything else going on, and I kind of wish it could have been a fight a bit more like the Viper in the Mountain, where it was a long, continuous thing where we see the progress of this fight, as opposed to this thing where we kept cutting back to it and had to keep going to other stuff. That said, the fight, when we were cutting back to it, it went pretty well, and while part of me is like, oh, with like the loss of the Hound, that in that case, both of them dying feels more satisfying because, like, the Hound kind of had accepted the fact that his single-minded pursuit of revenge was going to ultimately get him killed. He just wanted to be sure that when it did, he also got the revenge he was after. So, like, I can roll with that. I'm kind of okay with that. God, who else was there? Oh, Varys. That one was also kind of unsatisfying. I mean, again, it makes sense. It's logical. But again, because that happens, like, right at the start, it does feel like they're just burning off the character to just close him out and be done with him. Because, you know, his concerns about Cersei were to the point that, well, he's not going to stick around. And then there was Euron, who I was happy to see go, because I was just kind of done with him at this point. Like, he was fun briefly, like, a season, 2 seasons ago, maybe. But, yeah, no, I was kind of done with him, so that was fine. And that's all the named characters that I can recall at this point being killed. As I said, I might have missed 1 or 2. But the major thing that sort of has been occupying my brain. So, the rise of Mad Queen Daenerys. I'm going back and forth in my head as to how well they've actually pulled this off. There's something in my gut that just isn't quite all on board with it. And I've had, thankfully, I've had a night's sleep and sort of waking up and thinking about it more to sort of come to terms with why isn't this working? Because I see what they're going for. They're basically trying to pull a Walter White, where, you know, this entire show, I mean, not all that it's been about, but her arc has been her becoming a monster. And I can't say that they haven't put the work in. I do think there have been a few leaps in the last couple episodes, though, and also part of this transition depends on a plot point that I don't buy. So, in terms of overall progress, I remember complaining, like in earlier seasons, will they decide, is she a good leader or not? But that wavering back and forth makes more sense now if this was always the end game, because she had to display enough instability that this would be believable, but she had to display enough potential stability that people would continue to follow her so she could get to this point. So, like, trying to balance that for as long as they kept this thing going, I can see why she kind of wavered up and down in my estimation over the course of the show as much as she did. But again, that said, I feel like that there have been a couple of leaps. So, like, I was talking with Liz about some of this, and, like, she said that she felt the burning of the father and son, the Tarleys, last season was kind of the turning point for her. And I kind of cocked my head and go, I'm not sure that it was. Like, it was unnecessary, it was kind of cruel, but there was also a logic to it, which was that these were your enemies, they're not bending the knee. She could show mercy, or she could take them out. She chose to take them out. Was that the cruel choice of those choices? Yes, but it was still a logical choice given who they were in the situation that she was in. What she's doing now, where we literally hear her thought process is, she will burn this city to the ground and be totally fine annihilating thousands of innocent people because she'll save future generations from oppression. Like, we've gone from a logical but cruel choice to a completely faulty set of logic. So it's like her entire thought process mechanism has broken down in a way that, to me, again, feels like a bit of a leap. And I know there's contributing factors to this. There's the loss of Missandei, which, like, I get it. I actually forgot to mention that in my review of the previous episode, because she's not a character I ever particularly latched onto. But obviously Daenerys did, so it was important to her, so that's a factor. You know, with Varys betraying her, she probably has lost faith in Tyrion. She everything that's going on with Jon. But that's another problem, which is I don't buy the romance between her and Jon. I'm not sure how much of that is a writing problem and how much of that is just the fact that these two actors do not have any chemistry together. They just don't. Especially when I have Daenerys and Oh my god. And Drogo and Jon and Ygritte, for comparison, I can compare the times that these actors had chemistry with someone, then I look at the two of them together, I'm like, nope. So on paper, I get how this has damaged her feeling about people, that it's a contributing factor, but again, it doesn't help that I don't care and have no investment and don't really buy that relationship. So I feel like, in a lot of ways, on paper, they've done the work necessary to sell this whole thing of her basically being the very clearly the ancestor of the, oh sorry, not ancestor, the descendant of the Mad King. She basically does what he was trying to do, and like I can't say they didn't do the work, but I feel like there were points at which the work that they did was like C minus grade. Some of it was B and A, but like some of it, so that the end result doesn't feel as properly earned as it should when I like actually break it down and look at what they've been doing over the last few seasons. So it's left me in kind of an odd place. That said, like the more I think about it, the more I've kind of warmed to it. I'm not sure I'll ever completely warm to this thing, because I think there's just been execution issues along the way, but I think I can recognize enough of what they were trying to do, and the things that didn't quite click aren't massive and probably don't even exist for everybody. There's probably people that buy that relationship between those two heck of a lot more than I do, and if you do, it probably helps with probably people like Miss Endy a lot better than I do. That probably helps sell this to you. So for me, there's things like that that make it harder for me to swallow, while at the same time I'm not just going, no, don't buy it. So it's been an odd thing. Oh, there is one other thing that did strike me as odd, and again, it feels like an overstep in terms of the degree of her homicidal nature, which is that I would have thought once she made her decision, screw it, I don't care that they surrendered, that she would have made a beeline for the Red Keep and immediately leveled that, rather than going for the city, going for, and like, I'm not saying that she wouldn't also burn, like, so in my mind, what would have worked better if she went immediately for the Red Keep to take out Cersei, believed that she did that. You could still have Cersei die with Jaime. She doesn't have to die in the destruction of the Keep. You can have her get out, but have that be Daenerys' initial target. Realize that that did not slake her bloodlust, did not satisfy her need for vengeance and her twisted idea of justice, and then go after the citizens of the town. Doing it the other way around, again, feels like way faultier logic than I can buy her having at this point. Because if they're going for, I want Cersei to have to see the city burn before she dies, I need you to have Daenerys, like, say that at some point. Because just knowing what she used to be not all that long ago, that feels like too much of a leap. But I could have bought it if they'd switched those sort of targets around. Also, how much fire breath does that dragon have? Like, that thing goes a while. I'm not saying it has to adhere to How to Train Your Dragon rules, but I can't help but think back to that series where they firmly established that any given dragon has a certain number of shots before they basically need to lie down in a Gatorade. So, I don't know. That's nitpicky at this point. So, look, it was solid. It didn't quite work for me, but it's not the fall down of what I felt the previous episode was. And certainly in terms of selling the battle, it looks, I can tell what's going on, so that helps, versus 2 episodes ago. So I would say this puts the show in a stronger position for closing out than what had been done in the previous few episodes. So I'll take that. And I'll be good with it. Game of Thrones. You seen the latest episode? What did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. There's a whole bunch of stuff to do because there's buttons and links. There's the Patreon where you can support me here, and there's also things like getting on the Discord, name of the credits, all sorts of stuff. Check it out. Click on that, click on merch, or don't. You don't have to. I'd appreciate it, but at the end of the day, folks, you're the council. I'm just running the meeting. So until next time, this council is adjourned.